Imagine a world without supermarkets, without pharmacies, without central heating, and without the internet. A world where every day is a fight for life, where you can't buy breakfast, you have to hunt or gather it, where the cold isn't a reason to put on a sweater, but a real threat of death, where any scratch could be your last, and this is the world our ancestors lived in. Not mythical superheroes, but ordinary people, just like us, only without our technology and our confidence in tomorrow. How did they manage? How did humanity not just survive, but spread across the entire planet? Welcome to the world of survival. Chapter 1. Hunting and Gathering, the foundation of everything. For 99% of human history, our ancestors lived by hunting and gathering. This is an appropriative economy. Hunting was difficult, deadly, dangerous work. They hunted collectively, in groups of 15 to 20 people. Gathering was done by women and children. They found fruits, berries, edible roots, nuts, and even honey. Research shows that gathering was often even more effective than hunting as a reliable source of energy. Recent studies prove that the man the hunter, woman the gatherer stereotype has little in common with reality. Women hunted too, and men gathered. It all depended on the situation and what nature provided. What is truly astonishing, however, is the ancient human's omnivorous nature. Welcome to the journey. For a long time, it was believed that ancient people ate only what they killed or collected themselves. But science says otherwise, revealing a much more complex and adaptive diet. Scavenging, eating the meat of dead animals, was, along with hunting and gathering, a key survival strategy. And it wasn't a dirty, forced measure. Researchers call carrion a high-calorie and predictable food source. Imagine, you find the carcass of an elephant or a rhinoceros. That's food for several days, or even weeks. No need to expend energy on a dangerous hunt. You just need to spot the find in time and get there before the predators. Ancient people, from Homo habilis to Neanderthals, were superbly adapted to this way of procuring food. Their vision and sense of smell allowed them to detect signs of decomposition. Their physical endurance let them reach the carcass quickly. And stone tools, flakes and scrapers helped extract meat and bone marrow. Hunting and scavenging are not opposites, but two sides of adaptive behavior. In some situations, it's more advantageous to hunt. In others, to find ready-made prey. Flexibility, that's what allowed humans to survive in changing conditions. Now let's talk about what truly changed everything. Fire. The use of fire is an immense achievement of early humans. The first hearths burned over 500,000 years ago. How did people learn to use fire? Most likely, by accident. Lightning struck a dry tree, and a fire started. People saw the forest burning and gradually learned to preserve fire and carry it. Learning to strike a spark is a much later skill. But what did fire give to humanity? First, heat. Fire protected campsites from the cold. The settlement of humans from the tropical zone into colder regions would have been impossible without fire. Second, protection from predators. Fire scared away wild beasts. Third, food. Meat cooked over fire was better digested, reduced the risk of intestinal infections, and tasted better. Fourth, evolution. Cooked food was easier to chew. This meant powerful jaws and large teeth were no longer necessary. The human face gradually acquired modern features. Fifth, home. With the appearance of the hearth, a space intended for people emerged. A place to make tools, eat, sleep, and socialize. The sense of home was strengthened. Fire made humans independent of the climate and allowed them to spread across the entire planet. Chapter 4. Clothing. How to dress in the Ice Age. Now imagine, the Ice Age is coming. The temperature drops. Without clothing, survival is impossible. Ancient people learned to sew. And it was not just a craft, it was salvation. Archaeologists have established that humans colonized Siberia largely because they learned to sew high-quality clothing. Sewing technologies helped them occupy new territories and survive in the harshest conditions. Initially, people simply draped skins over themselves, but traveling long distances required more sophisticated technologies. The appearance of needles with miniature eyes was a breakthrough. Threads only 1.2 millimeters in diameter allowed the creation of clothing with fine seams, light, warm, and durable. What do we know about this clothing? At the Sungir site in the Vladimir region, burials over 27,000 years old were found. The deceased were dressed in excellently tailored fur onesies with hoods, decorated with belts featuring bone plates and embroidered with horn beads. These are not smelly hides, as often imagined. This is high-quality, thoughtfully designed, beautiful clothing. Clothing was especially crucial for children, the most vulnerable category. In poor quality clothing, a child could freeze to death. That is precisely why sewing was a matter of survival for the entire population. Chapter 5. Dwellings, not just caves. For a long time, it was believed that ancient people lived in caves, but that's not entirely true. Yes, caves were used as shelters from predators, cold winds, and snow. But living in a cave is not the most pleasant experience. It's dark, damp, and cold. The temperature year-round is no higher than +6 degrees Celsius. That's why people built dwellings. On the central Russian plain, archaeologists have found large, solid, semi-dugout houses. The foundation was made from mammoth skulls and jaws, and the ceilings from tusks. Several such houses have been found near the Mezhirik settlement. People didn't just live in dirt. They created comfortable and sturdy structures. They knew how to build complex residential constructions, make various stone tools, and even create amazing artistic imagery. And another important point, all ancient human campsites were located near water. Water was more important than anything else. Neither humans nor the animals they hunted could survive without it. What about illnesses? How did they treat themselves without doctors and pharmacies? Here, science offers some surprises. It turns out ancient people had practically no tooth decay, a true scourge of modern times. They fell ill less often than we do, but their rate of injuries was colossal. Hunting large animals, building, constant moving, all of this led to fractures, wounds, and dislocations. It was not uncommon to find people who had survived the amputation of an arm or a leg. This indicates that surgery was at a high level among ancient people. Archaeologists find evidence of skull trepanation, drilling holes in the head. An operation that was a death sentence in the Middle Ages was already being performed in the Stone Age. Neanderthals suffered from injuries, rickets, and rheumatism. But those who managed to survive were people of strong physique and developed brains. Yes, the medicine was primitive by our standards, but it existed, and it worked. We've already spoken about needles and fire, but let's look at the evolution of tools as a whole. It all started simply. A person picked up a pebble, a smooth, rounded stone, and sharpened it by striking it with another stone. The result was a crude but functional tool. Technologies gradually became more complex. Composite tools appeared, for example, a spear with a stone or bone tip attached to a shaft. Stone tools developed, scrapers for processing hides, knives for cutting, saws. Bone needles and harpoons for fishing appeared. The bow and arrow allowed for procuring more food and hunting at a distance. At the same time, the availability of stone raw materials was one of the main criteria when choosing a territory to live in. Without good stone, you can't make tools, and without tools, you can't survive. Why did humans survive while, say, the Neanderthals did not? The answer is not only in technology but also in social organization. Ancient people lived in groups. In a group, it's easier to hunt, easier to defend against predators, and easier to raise offspring. Gradually, chiefs, priests, warriors, and craftsmen emerged. Inequality appeared, but with it came specialization. Someone was a better hunter, someone a better tailor, someone a better healer. People communicated around the campfire, passed on knowledge, and taught children. Communication, cooperation, and mutual aid are not just pleasant extras. They are key survival factors. So how did people survive in the ancient world? They adapted to the cold with the help of fire and clothing, to hunger through hunting, gathering, and scavenging, to illness with primitive but effective medicine, to dangers through social organization and collective action. They learned. They passed knowledge from generation to generation. They improved tools. And as they explored, they colonized new territories. They didn't give up. They survived ice ages, climatic crises, and the threat of extinction. And eventually they populated all continents except Antarctica. Yes, their life was hard and short, but it was a life full of struggle, victories, and defeats. And each of us is an heir to this incredible story of survival. Thank you for your attention. If you liked this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments what other aspects of ancient people's lives you would like to learn about. See you in the next episode!